WMAY.
Vaccine mandates being heard by the U.S. Supreme Court. And in Illinois, the Illinois Department of Labor issuing some guidance Friday. We'll get some clarity on that now with the Illinois Manufacturers Association CEO and President Mark Denzler here on the WMAY Morning News Feed. Mark, thanks for taking time with us this morning. In just a few moments we've got here on WMAY, let's first talk about what was heard Friday in the U.S. Supreme Court and the impacts of the mandate from the Biden administration on employers of more than 100 employees. What would that mean for manufacturers or employers here in Illinois?
Well, good morning and Happy New Year, Greg. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, as you noted, the Supreme Court took oral arguments on Friday morning and are going to make a decision very quickly as to whether the president and OSHA's emergency temporary standard rule will continue to apply or not. As you know, it's been a little bit of a game of ping pong, but if the Supreme Court upholds the OSHA rule, then all private employers with 100 or more employees will begin to have to comply with this, which actually it takes effect today. Effective today, these employers with 100 or more have to have a plan in place, a written plan for vaccine or testing. And then by February 9th, they actually have to have that plan implemented. So they have to make sure that their employees are vaccinated or tested weekly, or they're liable to be fined nearly $14,000 per occurrence. So pretty significant fines for companies that would not be in compliance with that OSHA standard.
So we'll see what happens. Could come today, could come tomorrow. What the U.S. Supreme Court does is sometimes mysterious when they release rulings, but we are anticipating this ruling to be released before they typically release rulings come summertime. So we'll see what happens there. But Mark Denzler with the Illinois Manufacturers Association here on WMAY Friday, the Illinois Department of Labor published some rules. How I read it seemed to reflect OSHA's rules, but it's not for private employers. Is that how you're reading it?
You're correct, Greg, and there's been a lot of misunderstanding about this, and we've talked to the Department of Labor. The rule that they promulgated Friday afternoon, and it's required under the federal ETS, is that the state labor department has to adopt the rule. So they have proposed an emergency rule, but it only applies to public employers. So think your cities and counties and school districts, but not the private sector. And they have a little bit different dates. They don't have to have a plan in place until January 24th and then start testing a little bit later. And, you know, Greg, the private sector and manufacturers in particular understand that vaccines work and masks are an effective way of slowing the spread. However, private sector employers should be able to set their own rules and not have a one-size-fits-all approach. And so, again, manufacturers and the business community have done so much through this pandemic to make sure that we have safe workplaces, whether it's spacing employees and putting up barriers and providing PPE, that, again, we need to make sure that we have the power because every workplace is a little bit different.
So with the Illinois Department of Labor rule, what's your understanding if the U.S. Supreme Court strikes down the mandate for private employers? Would it be stricken here in Illinois for public employers?
That's what we're told by the Department of Labor, is that because it's tied to the federal ETS, that if the federal ETS were stricken, that the Illinois emergency rule would also go away, is what we're being told by the Department of Labor. But of course, the administration and an agency can always propose rules at any time, regardless of what happens federally.
Well, and we'll also see if this gets brought up during the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules, which is scheduled to meet tomorrow, where they take up such emergency rule making. Mark Denzler, Illinois Manufacturers Association. Again, just briefly, if you could talk about the impacts if the federal OSHA mandate is allowed to stand. Would that send ripples across the employment sector?
It certainly will. We're getting dozens of phone calls a week from companies about how to comply with this. It's costly, it's confusing, it's cumbersome. There's a dearth of testing right now. And so if you're a federal contractor, you don't have a testing option. And so there's a risk of losing employees. We're already seeing that. And again, this applies to businesses with 100 or more. We're starting to see some of those businesses lose employees to smaller companies where they won't have to get tested or get a vaccine. And so it's going to have an impact